Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Leaving the Farm, only on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. We are a listener-supported radio station, where if you would like to donate, please visit our support pages at freedomslips.com. I'm praying that everybody is well tonight. We'll just get into it. On the Raw story today, we've got Florida policemen accused of forcing women into sex and groin punching during a traffic stop. Two Lauderdale, Florida police officers were arrested Friday and charged with simple battery and unlawful compensation for allegedly forcing a woman into having sex with one of them and ordering one to punch the other in the groin to avoid arrest. Now let's delve into that a little bit, shall we? From Psychology Today, a paraphilia is a condition in which a person's sexual arousal and gratification depend on fantasizing about and engaging in sexual behavior that is atypical and extreme. Now let's go delve into psychopathy, shall we? From Vanderbilt University, Vanderbilt News, psychopaths' brains are wired to seek rewards no matter what the consequences are. Now what we're dealing with is a society full of psychopathy. And, this week we've been having arguments left and right over a Facebook incident where a man was being beaten and intimidated, harassed, threatened, and he had told his wife that he was going to leave, and eventually she had pulled a knife on him, yada, yada, according to the police reports anyway. And so he had executed her and shot her in the head, or it in the head. And my argument is that he removed a psychopath from the ability to harm. And from the, quote, chatter around the media, alternative media, mainstream media, and everything else, everybody is assuming that she's a female. Everybody is assuming that she's a mom because there was a child there. However, she was able to view him as an object in order to be beating on him in the first place. And so we need to be aware of what we're dealing with, what a psychopath is. They have no human emotion, they have no compassion, and they view human beings as objects, including children. And the female psychopath expressly is very prolific. She's very quiet, and she looks so darn pretty. She's got these little eyes and this little pouty mouth and breasts and a vagina, and she just looks like she can't be actually doing what she's been doing. And so society has given her a lawful pass or legal pass to do such things, and relying on the courts by which to, quote, punish her or alter her course. She's not going to alter its course because she doesn't have the human concepts that we have. She doesn't feel as a human. She doesn't act as a human. She doesn't walk as a human. It walks as a psychopath, and that is what the res is. She has no idea what she is. She's always seeking reward. She's always seeking to find the self. And in that, she's never at the present tense. She's never here. She's empty. And that is the definition of sin. Sin in Latin means without. Moving on, there were some concerns this week. The Department of Homeland Security, as reported on federaljack.com, the Department of Homeland Security says it is illegal to freely play music in the USSA. The Department of Homeland Security is now demanding through enforcement from the state fire marshals that all live music played in the United States must have a permit from the Department of Homeland Security. Now, when we go visit the BBG, the Broadcasting Board of Governors, on their about pages, it stipulates, quote, the Broadcasting Board of Governors, or BBG, is an independent federal agency supervising all U.S. government-supported civilian international media. Now, let's go into that word independent, shall we? From Online Etymology Dictionary, or etymonline.com, we find that the etymology on independent is, quote, in, I-N, meaning not opposite of, plus dependent. So you find that it's in a dependent state. The BBG is dependent on Congress, its creator. And when you go back to the story that was shared, the Department of Homeland Security says it is illegal to freely play music in the USA. We find that also is a dependent agency on Congress. Congress created the Homeland Security. Congress created the National Security Act. Congress, therefore, created the National Security Agency. Congress created the National Security Council, which is in the State Department. And these things are all brought forward in alignment with national security, contrary to state security. If they were referring to the human being, it would be state security, sovereign state security. That's what you are. You are the sovereign state that they usurped with the Articles of Confederation, especially Article 12 of the Articles of Confederation in 1777. And what that means for you is that, of course, you've been charged and pledged to offset congressional bankruptcy. So one of these means is through the 27 CFR 72.11, which is the Code of Federal Regulations. And what you're doing is offsetting their bankruptcy by entering into the legal system, entering into the medical system, entering into the psychological system. And perpetually you're producing. And that is the only limitation on usufruct. The only rule for usufructory is that the capacity never diminishes. Well, capit stems from the word head, or like a human head or head of cattle. And so your capacity or your earning power, your ability never diminishes. And that means if you're not producing through taxation and consumption, you're going to be producing through the medical industry. You're going to be producing through the psychological industry. You're going to be producing through the criminal industry. They've got you coming and going, and Congress is cashing in on everything that happens to you. This is by the people, for the people, of the people. And the people were redefined in the 14th Amendment, wherein a person is now a corporation. That is a living being. And or what they stipulate is a living being according to the 14th Amendment. All of the other citizens and residents, which means thing, res, those are naturalized. They are entered in and subject to the Constitution and laws thereof. Let me see. From other news this week, let's see. Police taught to make eye contact, nod, and be polite in bid to improve satisfaction levels in the UK. This is reported on the dailymail.co.uk. This is very concerning because, as I said before, the psychopath does not have human emotion. It does not have empathy for other humans, and it's able to view the human as an object. And so if you teach it to present in another way, then it's even more trick and deception. So here's a psychopath that's hiding behind a smile, or hiding behind a nod, or hiding behind, the eye contact, making you feel like it's, more human than it is when it's only a useful idiot. And you can see this by the court orders requiring the law enforcement have low IQs in order to be manipulated by attorneys, by that board of governors, by congressional action. And human beings are still being labeled as the predator, when in reality, this other entity or group of other entities is, maintaining the global form of psychopathy. Again, we'd like to point everybody to chooseyourside.org. If you would like to step out of this system, if you would like to get away from this, if you would like to stop patronizing, learn how to do that. You are the authority. They have taught you that you are not the authority. And going back to the earlier story this week, that man, he had killed a psychopath. It was in self-defense. Jesus taught nothing but compassion and justice. And part of that compassion is removing all harm from the ability to harm. And I know this is probably a hard concept for many, many, many to grasp and realize, but this is what self-governing is. And I'll go into that. If you have a male or a female psychopath beating your head in or teaching children that this is normalized behavior, this breeds more psychopathy. This breeds normalization within family and within community. And so these entities become normal. Well, I get beat on, but it's okay, she's only my mom. Or I get beat on, but it's okay, she's only my dad. Well, then the child grows up and it becomes psychopathic, and then my children get to bump into that thing, and my children have the potential of dying at the hands of that thing. I do not want this. I'm not going to stand for it. It is not tolerable. It is not acceptable in my mind, in my community, because that is my only predator. Human beings do not have any natural predator. The only thing that preys on us is psychopathy. And we have to divest ourselves from that thing. We have to get rid of it. And if this is the way it has to be, this is the way it has to be. That is self-governing. And when you go into court, and for example, if I go into court, and I did this back in 2010, I was attempted on, I did not go to that particular hearing because it was already gained. And when the guy was assaulting me, everything else, police came out and told me, well, we can't get him for breaking and entering. Although I was on the phone with 911 while he was breaking and entering, then they said it was domestic violence because he lived on my property. He lived in an RV on my property. And eventually they codified it as if I was an animal. The code said that I was an animal and he had harmed one of Caesar's animals. So I will explain that one. When I go into court and I have been assaulted or raped, that court, which is actually a bank, will charge the predator rent on my body. That is what a charge is. Criminal charges are to charge for rent on the human body. When a child is raped or molested, that bank will charge the perpetrator rent on that child. That bank will cash in. That bank cashes in again while it's in prison. That bank will cash in again and again and again because it's going to play catch and release with that thing. And that thing will be let out into society over and over and over again in order to generate revenue into attorney pockets. I see we have a caller on 970. You're on the air.
Hi, Tammy. How are you? My name's Kelly.
Oh, I can barely hear you. You're breaking up. How are you?
Good. My name's Kelly. Can you hear me okay?
Now I can. It's a little bit better. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of different questions. Long-time listeners, first time calling in.
Thank you.
Let's see here. The first question I had for you was, I've been listening and I've read your forgiveness doc and the executor doc, and I'm just trying to understand, after filing these, what are the ramifications to, as our life as we know it, as far as mortgages and loans? Like if you want to go get a car and you can't afford it, can that you can no longer get a loan after that? Is that correct?
Absolutely not. And what it is that you are the authority. We don't act on credit, okay? We don't go out and sign any more dead pledges. A mortgage is a dead pledge, mortgage. And what that invokes, you have to go all the way back to the 1666 Cesare Vi Act, but you have been designated lost at sea. If you are lost more than 6 or 7 years, you can be declared dead, or you can help them and declare yourself dead by entering into a mortgage. which is a dead pledge. So you're saying that you're dead, and at that instance, you're invoking 38 USC 108, which is no longer the presumption of death. Now you're dead, and you have to be used to generate revenue into the coffers to offset congressional bankruptcy. And this is all by trick and deception. Now, when you first go into that bank and you purchase that home for the first time, or when anybody purchases a home through a bank for the first time, they're actually indicating that the bank owns it. Before that, the bank never owned it. They don't have any land. Congress never had any land. It was all by consent. In 1802, for example, with the Acts of Enablement in 1802, first they indemnified you and pledged you, and said that you are responsible for all this debt. Second of all, in 1802, through the Acts of Enablement and forward, they had cut up the country, or what appeared to be a country, into districts. And to do that, they had come to you, the human being, all of the yous at that time in 1802, and they said, look, we, the church, would like to donate all this land over to these colleges. And the sheeple stood up and they said, yay, let's do that. Prior to that time, the church never had any land. Congress never had any land. And so what you did was you volunteered that land. It was yours. You just didn't realize it was yours. And ever since, this is the Northwest Passage. This is everything. The Treaty of Versailles, you can read it in the Treaty of Peace. Spain got all the roads in the Treaty of Peace because they were offsetting congressional bankruptcy. That's why you are ticketed through the Department of Transportation for moving violations or speeding tickets for rolling through a stop sign or whatever else. This generates revenue to offset the congressional bankruptcy at that time. If you go back to the Treaty of Peace, there's the Treaty of Amity, Commerce, and Navigation. So you're being posted. When you accept anything in the mail, in the dead name, the last name that they own, you're actually creating your own bond. You're posting your own bond under 18 U.S.C. 1342 and being maintained as a felon as well. So all of these things, you're being used to offset congressional bankruptcy, including a mortgage, because you're pledging that you're dead. You're saying that you're dead, so there's no longer a presumption that you're dead. Now you're saying that you're dead.
Okay, so what would be the correct way to return mail that is addressed incorrectly? I mean, do you just write that on it?
Well, what we did was we had a stamp made to make it easier, and it's simply unacceptable mail, quote, unacceptable mail as per 18 U.S.C. 1342, return to sender. And if they send it again, they're in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1341 because they're trying to communicate with you in order to generate revenue by maintaining as a fiction. They're also a fiction. When you get a bill from your utility company or anyone else, they're a fiction. And they're trying to generate revenue through the mail system.
Is that considered a felony then, to accept a mail that's addressed to a fiction?
Yes, because you're not taking it in the proper name. The proper name is only the first and middle in the United States. It might be, often in other countries, it's only the first name, the praenomen. But in this country, or quote country, your first and middle name are not indicative of a tribe or anything. So the first name is, the praenomen is usually the first and middle. Like my name is, my proper name is Tamara Kay. But there's still tribal connotations in, like India. So you have the first name, and then they'll have the tribe name or the clan name, and then following that would be like, that's why they use the word sing. It means male, and kor means female. So they're indicating male and female in the name. And so you don't want to use those other names. You only want to stick to the praenomen, which is the proper name, defined in Black's Law Dictionary. And this is quoted in 18 U.S.C. 1342 as well.
18, was it 1842?
1342.
13. So 18 U.S. 1342?
Yeah, I'll read it real quick. 18 U.S.C. 1342. Excuse me. And its title is fictitious name or address. And it starts out, quote, whoever, for the purpose of conducting, promoting, or carrying on, by means of the Postal Service, any scheme or device mentioned in Section 1341 of this title, or any other unlawful business, uses or assumes or requests to be addressed by any fictitious, false, or assumed title, name, or address, or name other than his own proper name, or takes or receives from any post office or authorized depository mail matter, any letter, postal card, package, or any other mail matter addressed to any such fictitious, false, or assumed name, title, name, or address, or name other than his own proper name shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 5 years or both.
Holy cow. Okay. So, let's see here. I had another question. I wanted to know why you have to record the forgiveness and executor doc after an action has been placed against you. You can't just go do it.
Well, there's a lot of the times what's happened is they're holding you hostage by patentability. When they did the letters patent, way back when John's sons got the ability to patent you if they found you. You've been lost at sea. And so finding you is only the fact that you answer to that name. When you go into a hospital, when you're born in a hospital, that legal name is created. You've been found by a founding hospital. When you go into court, you're there as a deposit, you've been found by the court. And when you go into a bank, you've been found by the bank. That thing is only a representation of a judge. The court is actually the bank, according to Black's Law Dictionary. If you go to Black's Law Dictionary, first edition, let me find it real quick. Sorry.
I have a Black's Law Dictionary, but I only have the 6th edition.
All right, yeah, I use, and we suggest everybody, get at least Black's Law, 1st edition, 4th edition, and somewhere after the 7th edition. So you want 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th, because they change according to market conditions. That is the only alteration of these dictionaries. It means they're dictating to you what the law is. And when you go all the way back in time to the original dictionaries, they were called lexicons. Lex means law, and con means with. So those are just with law. They're teaching you what you are, teaching you how to be, giving you all these concepts and all these rights and benefits that come along with the concepts. And these are all fictional characters. That creates you a fictional character in a play. So you're just part of a play all of your life, and you're generating revenue to your transgressor, which means congress. That means with. Gress comes from tress or egress or gress, which means a walk. So here's your walk. You're on a regular walk, and you're on your own path, and somebody comes in and sidelines you with something in your place. And Jesus maintained that is shutting up the kingdom of heaven. And that's what happened. You've been sidelined. Your kingdom has been shut up because there's a law in your path. There's something now in your path, and you need to be able to overcome that. And that's what the forgiveness and executor doc do. It obliterates that statutory ability and maintains that you're expatriated and patriated into your own house. You're not asking them to represent you any longer. And that's your law. You're legislating that. The definition of bank from Black's Law Dictionary, first edition. Number 1, a bench or seat. The bench or tribunal occupied by the judges. The seat of judgment, a court. The full bench or full court, the assembly of all the judges of a court. A sitting in bank is a meeting of all the judges of a court, usually for the purpose of hearing arguments on demurrers, points received, motions for new trial, etc., as distinguished from the sitting of a single judge at the assizes or nisi-prius and from trials at bar. But in this sense, bank, B-A-N-C, is the more usual form of the word. Number 2, an institution of great value in the commercial world, empowered to receive deposits of money, to make loans, and to issue its promissory notes designed to circulate its money, and commonly called bank notes or bank bills, or to perform any one or more of these functions. Now, when you go to the definition of deposit, let me get there. I'm looking at the dictionary at this time. Out of Black's first edition. Sorry, please forgive me for the wait.
No worries. While you're looking, I did have another question. So currently, the place that I live in, I rent, and I'd like to, practice this and continue and live this way. But I'd like to basically get some property that belongs to me, and so I'm trying to figure out what the process is. If I can't get a loan, which is all I've ever known, what would be the process?
Well, what happened was Congress had come in. We entered into contract with Congress in 1776, and at that point in time, that contract ended at Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3. No bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. Article 1, Section 8, Clauses 1 and 2 maintain that the human being is on general welfare and that the corporations pay taxes in order to maintain you on general welfare and provide for your common defense. Now, that was perverted by the Articles of Confederation, specifically Article 12, where you were charged and pledged to offset congressional bankruptcy. And now, since that time, corporations have been maintained on welfare, which is called the corporate welfare theorem, the first and second welfare theorem, to be exact. Read that thing, because you, human product, have been usurped in order for corporations to come in and be living according to the 14th Amendment that the attorney, president, and credit reporter for Dun & Bradstreet displayed at that time, 3 days prior to the 14th Amendment being facilitated by that psychopath. He had done the Expatriation Act, which maintained that attorneys could expatriate at that time in order to repatriate to the bar, which is a fictional government. Now, we just facilitated a case recently, and it's finalized over, and we won, maintaining general welfare. We're just working out the kinks at this time because, of course, they're screaming. They don't want to be held accountable. Senate tried to avoid the summons by they had opened their packaging and then resealed it with tape that says open for inspection and returned it to us in order to, I don't know, say they didn't receive it, but of course they received it. We have the evidence that they're in receipt of this information and that it wasn't open for inspection. And, it's just funny. They never thought that they would be held accountable, and now that they're held accountable, they don't know what to do. Going back to deposit, from Black's Law Dictionary, first edition. A deposit is a naked bailment of goods to be kept for the depositor without reward and to be returned when he shall require it. Now, remember that a naked bailment of goods, because when you go to the definition of name, N-A-A-M, from Black's Law Dictionary, name, N-A-A-M, signifies that it is goods and chattel, and that you've been seized at that thing, which is the last name, of course, because property can't be seized. It's a living being or be living entity. It's not a franchise. It's not an incorporated state. It's just you, the United States of being, and that's what Jesus was trying to teach. Jesus was trying to teach everybody, hey, look, you're I am. I am is the United States of being. You're all one entity. And if you don't wake up now and stop being segregated and secular as maintained by the church and its court, its banks, its nomenclature, its record of criminal actions upon you, you're going to have a heck of a time being crucified. And that is the crucifixion. When you go to the Coronation Charter, you have been kept because you're claiming that name. You're claiming to be a dead thing, so you're going to be crucified on that cross. You're hanging yourself on that cross because you're subscribing to all of this. You're subscribing the policy, the insurance policy, by claiming that name. And let me go back to it here.
So back to my question, which was trying to get a piece of land where I'm not paying rent and I own it, but I can no longer do it through the existing system. I mean, is it something where I have to partially use the system and then do like maybe a writ of seizure afterwards, or
No,
how do I get out of renting?
Right, we've won the case. They've been indemnified since December. In March, we came in and we took their funding through the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. The United States Incorporated is no longer members as of March 8th of this year. And then coming forward in this case, we entered into an agreed entry with Northern Holdings, which is a holding corporation for corporate receivership. Now, as a dead thing, you're being held as prisoner of war under the 1929 Geneva Convention, and under that same action, you're being held under corporate receivership because you're claiming the name, which maintains that you are bankrupt. Bankrupt stems from the word depraved. You don't know who you are. And so every time you're claiming that name, you're giving up your inheritance or your estate as the heir, because you're invoking what's known as beneficium abstinendi, which is your right to abstain the right to be the heir under the doctrine of elections. Under the doctrine of elections, you can only have either a right or a benefit, but neither both, and you're never the heir because you're subscribing to somebody else's, your father or the parent under parens patriae. So here you're asking your daddy to give you a benefit, and so because you've chosen that trustee, the other daddy fiduciary, it's giving you a benefit, but it's holding on to tightly your whole entire inheritance. And that was what the case was in the Northern District of Indiana. We came in and we said, no, this is human trafficking. Article 12 is evidence of human trafficking. Okay, you cannot pledge and charge any human being to offset congressional bankruptcy based on the action of debenture. That's servitude. That's human trafficking on its face. And so they have been held accountable. We're just waiting for everybody else to stand up because they're sitting there saying, well, what do we do now? Well, they have options. If the United States of Being doesn't appear and it doesn't stand up behind us, then of course we're going to fail, right? They control the media. And so all of these sheeple can be presented with all of these lovey-dovey things and we're protecting you over here. Look, we charged this guy. No, that guy was just hooked out. His victim was just a prostitute. The judge was a pimp. They just generated a whole bunch of money. But the sheeple view it as something good. That guy was charged and they're protecting us and we're safe now because they put him in prison. Those are private industry. This is a private industry. There's 3 forms of production on this planet. 1/3 of the global GDP is in taxation and consumption. 1/3 is in medicine, psychology, and death, and 1/3 is in criminalization. So if you're not paying your taxes and you're not consuming like a good little sheeple, you're going to be killed through the medical industry. You're going to be institutionalized through the psychological industry, or you're going to be maintained. You're going to get sick. You're going to be generating revenue until your insurance plays out, and at that time, you become either dead or a criminal. There's no other options. There's only those 3 forms of production on this planet. Now, the definition of name from Black's Law Dictionary, NAAM, is the attaching or taking of movable goods and chattels called vis or mort, according as the chattels were living or dead. Okay, now the male is presumed to be living but lost at sea. The female is presumed to be dead, but she hasn't been claimed. She's never been claimed by another entity other than her state father since the coronation charter. So that father comes in and it says, well, I own you and I'm going to give you a benefit. I'm going to give you welfare. I'm going to give you food stamps. I'm going to give you housing allotments. I'll give you shoe vouchers, for Christ's sakes. And I'm the good guy. But she never gets her inheritance. And in order for her to garner those things, she has to remove the male from her life. She has to be a single mother. She has to keep breeding when that runs out, because every time the kids age out, she's crap out of luck, right? She doesn't have anything. She's not a good use if she doesn't have pawns to the game. The definition of name NAM in Old English law, a distress or seizure of chattels. So you claim that name, go ahead and say you're female. I'll give you all the rights you want. However, you get to be tricked out. Like I said, when I was assaulted and attempted on, they codified it as I was one of Caesar's animals. And so they cashed it. The prosecuting attorney right away, under the Violence Against Women Act, gets $6,000 to prosecute that case. I didn't see any of that. So I have a $6,000 dollar amount placed on my vagina, or whatever part of my body that the perpetrator wanted to beat the heck out of, and they cash in on this. Now that's an action of prostitution. That is promoting prostitution. That judge just became my pimp, and the sheeple think that's a good idea. However, let's go into what happens to children, because when children are preyed on by these psychopaths, and children are used, and children are raped and molested, that same bank is charging that perpetrator rent on their bodies as well. Now, that's not a very good system, is it? I mean, do you really want them to represent you in such a way that they're cashing in on everything that happens to you and you're not getting anything? You might get a stripping. You can sue them for damages or injury, but again, you're going back into law. Injury means to put into law. And so everything that happens to you, say you're diagnosed as being assaulted, that judge puts in for CMS, right? So he's claiming insurance. That judge just diagnosed you as being brought into law, not harmed by no means were you harmed. You were just brought into law, and they just hooked you out. And it, you know, these females especially, this is the action of hearts and minds. It's engineered so that the female goes off and it relies on insurance. She's going to go get all of these rights and benefits, but that's the requirement. So she's always injured. So say I'm assaulted right now. First of all, the judge will cash in on my assault. If I go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and I'm diagnosed with PTSD, that judge is going to cash in on that again. Okay? On top of that, if I'm diagnosed with a mental disorder, they're going to send CPS to my door to take the children off of me. Those children are going to be diagnosed as injured by me because I've been injured. And this cyclical pattern goes on and on and on and on and on and on, and it never ends. You are always producing because the capacity cannot be diminished.
So we just have to exit the system and not use it, and that's what I'm trying to do. I just can't figure out how to get out of renting so I can get out of having to go, to work every day, and I can focus on, producing something that I could sell locally or.
Right, and this will
happen. Just trying to figure out a plan.
Right, and this will happen soon. We did win the case. We're just now putting our foot down, and everybody needs to stand behind us in order to facilitate this. Otherwise, they can just ignore everything. You know how it goes. If you don't have the media coverage, if you don't have the weight behind things, you're always going to be just crapped on. We have 903 on the line as well. Just one moment. 903?
Yes.
Hi.
Hello, Tammy. Tammy, I've talked to you before, and I put in all my docs, and the police chief resigned. He's retiring, is his words for it, but I think my docs had an effect on that. What I need to know urgently is how to find the template for water, electric, and cable bills, and how to get my mortgage taken care of and get on handle my Social Security.
Right. The Social Security is yours already. It's not going to be stolen from you because it's part of a strip, and as long as you're not applying for it after you do the docs, that stays there. The mortgage we need to take care of with an equitable estoppel, because in the first place, there's so many things wrong with a mortgage. The beginning is the deed pledge, of course. Second to that is the borrower's covenant, which maintains that you're giving the whole estate lawfully to them to raise it. You can't do that. You can never give your body to a pimp, and they can never claim your body as theirs. That's not an enforceable contract. And so we need to step in with that equitable estoppel. Are you in the classes?
Am I in what?
Are you in the Skype classes with us?
I don't know.
Okay. Do you have Skype available to you?
You say Skype?
Yes.
No, I don't.
Okay, and you do have an email, though?
My client is helping me get the documents filed, and then he needs to know how to find the template for getting them to take care of bills and the mortgage. That's
right.
Sort of urgent now.
Right, and the bills, what those are remittance. They're changing money into money from a prior state. So when you get a quote bill or a remittance coupon, it's allowing them to alter the form of money that's being used. Before it was you, and then they turn that into, of course, the Federal Reserve note, which is a debt note on your back. And so we need to obliterate that. Do you have access to email?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, my email address is TAMIKAY.
KAY.
Yes, 23.
13.
No, 23.
I didn't get that.
The number 23, 23.
23.
Yes, sir. At hotmail.com.
At hotmail.com.
Yeah, and go ahead and email me, and then I'll be able to send you what you need, and hopefully we can get you on Skype so that you can join us. Also, all of the documentation and everything that we have in file formats is located on chooseyourside.org. Chooseyourside.org. Yes, all one.
That's where to find the template?
Yes. Yeah, all of them are in there. The utility letters are in there. We ended up doing 2 of them because the first one, of course, they didn't alter the mailing address. They were maintaining, well, our computer doesn't let us. Well, that's your problem, not mine. I don't receive anything in all capital letters. I don't receive anything in the last name. And everything that I'm to receive has to have a temporary post location on it because I'm not there. I'm a state of being. I don't have a placement. And that's what Jesus was trying to say. He says, I have no place to lay my head. Don't have a place to lay your head. I'm always everywhere. I'm the United States of being, so I don't have a physical location. Your fictions created physical locations in geographical states. Geograph only means to write about the earth. It doesn't mean that it's delineated to anybody. Dominion was maintained with the Articles of Confederation, and they just took it.
We're continuing to receive mail back, which has all capital letters, or it has the regular zip code, or there's something that it needs to still be rejected. And
right, and again, black it out. When we get things back, the reason they're sending you back those things is under the constitutional theory, all bills become law if not rejected or returned within 10 days. And so when you get a bill in the mail and it's not returned in 10 days, it becomes a law. Or by consent, you've already consented into interacting in that way and altering yourself into a monetary unit of exchange, which is what a remittance coupon does. It changes you or that bill into a unit of exchange, which is a debt. The Federal Reserve note is a debt.
Yes. Okay, my water bill is due over the weekend. What should I do about it?
So right now, I would pay it. Don't pay it with a remittance coupon. If you can pay it and have somebody else pay it in person for now until you can do the equitable estoppel. There's also an equitable estoppel by election, because what they're presuming is that you're electing them as your representation, and so you need to come in and say, no, I'm taking the third option. Here's my forgiveness and executor doc. I've obliterated that franchise. I'm the executor over that thing, and I'm not a citizen of your corporation. I'm not a citizen of your style, which is the United States of America. The United States of America is not a geographical state. It's a style, S-T-I-L-E, as written in the Articles of Confederation. That only maintains that it's a chain of events. So what it is a criminal action upon you, or a bunch of criminal actions upon you, and everybody's been consenting to this. And once you get those docs down, which, as you're finding out, the chief of police is retiring, they're doing that all over the country. Sheriffs are retiring, judges are retiring. They don't want to be held accountable. However, what they don't know is that we went back channel, we went to their employer, the House of Lords, and we said, hey, look, you're on the hook for this stuff. And we put a seizure on their clerical goods. So those PERS account, MERS accounts, those aren't anymore for the fiction. And there's nothing they can do about it. They can run. And this is what Revelation said, that when you found out what was written in their book, your wrath would be apparent, and they're going to be hiding beneath the mountains, praying for them to fall upon them and hide them from your wrath. That's exactly what's happening, but they're not going to be able to run very far. There's nothing in it for them. They just think.
I also heard that I had a court date of the 13th, which is Tuesday, but I hadn't heard from them. So this is good news, I think, isn't it?
Absolutely. And make sure that, they didn't summon you or anything this time, did they?
They didn't what?
Did you already sent them your fee schedule, didn't you?
Yes. Oh, well, I don't know who to send it to, except the original judge has it, but see, it switched me to another county, and I don't have the judge's name. And
right, that's okay. You sent it notice to principal as notice to agent, so he has a requirement to notify the others. And what's going on is that if they want you to appear as the evidence, that's going to cost them $33 billion. And you've already maintained that contract, so they can go ahead and do whatever you want, but you are going to take this over under 46 U.S.C. 313.45. Let me go find it again. I just had it earlier. Because they've maintained a lien on a public vessel, what that is they're volunteering to assume the charge under 46... suits involving public vessels, 46 U.S.C. Chapter 311. They don't have any immunity because they're a foreign state, first of all. Second of all, you've already notified them that you know about the lien and that you're not going to take it. You are a public vessel, and you've called them on this and maintained what is known. It used to require a counterclaim. Now it doesn't require a counterclaim. That's all been nullified and obliterated because they can't do that. I mean, if you come in with a complaint, that means you're a co-plaintiff and they're one of them. Well, that's not lawful on its face at all. So they had to take out all of that language and redo their little trick and deception game based on, current actions, which is quite ironic.
One thing we lack is getting in the wet ink contract.
Right, you're never going to get the wet ink contract because they've already negotiated it as a negotiable instrument. You're going to get a copy. You're going to get somebody to come in and testify, well, I know about this. You need to impeach them as a witness for want of witness. Right, you're never going to get the wet ink contract because they've already negotiated it as a negotiable instrument. You're going to get a copy. You're going to get somebody to come in and testify, well, I know about this. You need to impeach them as a witness for want of witness because they weren't there at the signing of that contract. They weren't there. And on top of that, when you go over the, no, you didn't give me the original. when you go above that and say, hey, wait a second, mortgage is unlawful on its face, I can't pledge that I'm dead. And I also can't enter into the borrower's covenant with you because that maintains that I'm giving you my body, you're my pimp, and that's an unenforceable contract. If you were my pimp and I was a prostitute and I decided no longer to be a prostitute, you could not take me into court and compel that contract because it's an unlawful contract on its face. You know, a criminal cannot compel that contract of prostitution. The mortgage itself is a prostitution aspect. The borrower's covenant itself is where you're giving your estate over to another entity, and that's your body. You can't do that. You can never enter into contract to be a prostitute. You can verbally and orally or whatever you're going to do. However, those are unlawful actions, and a court cannot enforce those things.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Tammy.
Everything will be well. We just have to get everybody on one page, you know, because for so long everybody's been tricked and deceived into accepting all of these concepts and thoughts and colorful ideas, and that's all it's ever been, is just color. The appearance, illusion, or guise of something. There's nothing there. You know, and when we came in, and that was the neatest thing. Under the Cesar K. Vi Act, they're assuming that we're dead and we're lost at sea, and then they overcome the presumption by mortgageability and all this. So in court, we said, hey, look, we want a judge to appear. We want a judge here at this hearing. And when we compelled the title of the judge, no judge appeared, and so we had to overrule it. And then we had to declare it dead, and we sent that off to the Department of State, which is the Secretary of State, John Kerry. We said, look, that thing, we looked for it everywhere. We couldn't find it, so we have to do this according to 38 U.S.C. 108. Now, the State Department never argued that. That's the clearinghouse, according to the bankruptcy rules. And so what they've been doing is they've been putting all of us through corporate receivership, sending our accounts off to the clearinghouse to offset congressional bankruptcy because based on the presumption that we're dead. And we came in and we said, no, we're the only living thing here. That guy over there, that attorney, he's worshiping a fictional government called the bar. That attorney over there, he says he's working on behalf of the federal state. That thing's been bankrupt since 1933. That's a fiction. So it has to be presumed dead. It's not living. It worships fictional things. It has no idea who it is. And you know, here it is with the last name and everything else. And so that presumption has been overcome. And the presumption now is that the human being is be living. It's no longer dead.
Are we still connected?
We are. Can you still hear me?
See, I was stopped, and I was not given a citation, but I was stopped, and I didn't ID, and so they arrested me and put me in jail, and then after spending 3 hours in jail missing my breakfast, well, I was just going to eat breakfast, and then they let me appear before a judge, and then I didn't sign the ticket. They made the ticket out, but I didn't sign it because signing one's name means entering into a contract with, and so I didn't sign my name. And then, but the judge came in and says, "You're going back to jail if you don't sign this sheet here that requires you to go to court. If you don't sign it, you're going back to jail." So I didn't know about you then, and so I signed it, and then I've appeared in a hearing and a pretrial hearing and opted for a trial by jury, and then, but I didn't show. I was a no-show. I'd contacted you through my friend Brian then, and he said, "No, don't go." And so I didn't go, so I was arrested and spent 4 days on a hard bench.
We'll be right back. Stay on the line, please. we'll be right back after the break.
Okay.
Welcome back to Leaving the Farm right here only on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And remember, we're a listener-supported radio station, and if you'd like to donate, please go to our listener support pages and give as much as you can. Hawk does this out of the kindness of his heart, the goodness of his heart. This is so important to get the word out. And if you like what you're hearing, please keep their station going and keep Hawk on the air and keep us on the air. Before the break, we were talking to area code 903. We were talking about no-show jury trial ordinance of the states, and what that is prior to being in the system, or prior to him knowing us and knowing this process. There were mistakes made, appearances before the bank, and things like that. But now that there is full awareness, then we can lay down the ordinance of the states. This is your law. These things are legislated, and you're letting them know if they'd like to contract with you, you'll be willing to contract for a fee. And this is fully lawful. We've taken this through U.S. District Court. We've established the United States Court. And things are moving forward. But like I said, we need to all be behind each other. We all need to create that media presence, because that's what's required. They've had the media now for I don't know how long, and stipulating and maintaining to the sheeple that, this is the way things are. We like to live in our consensus reality society. We like to live as fictions. And this is how fictions act. They're acting within corporate psychology. They're acting as commercial product. And we need to step away from that and step all the way outside of 27 CFR 72.11 that maintains that I'm a piece of property, you're a piece of property, and the bank will charge our perpetrators of all the crimes upon us for the use of our body under the nature of rent, according to Malthus. That is Malthusian theory. That's the bottom line. We need to get out of all of this and step into our own authority. 903, we're back.
Yes, ma'am. I got to where I was in jail for 4 days, and I was able to bail myself out because I had helped a lady and her husband, and she returned the money, but now the funds are almost depleted that I have, and then I took all the money out of the bank, and had I not gotten out, well, my friend Brian and I could not have got the papers that we needed to record the executor, the forgiveness doc, and the others in the federal court public site. Public site. And so now that we've done that, things are moving real good, I think. I haven't been notified of a court date, and I don't expect to be.
No, they can't now, because if they subpoena you or selling you in any way, they're invoking that fee schedule. And on our fee schedule, it says, hey, I'll appear as evidence. I'm not going to come in before you or before your court as a deposit, but I will appear as evidence, which means I'm going to put myself on a document and let you know that I'm be living. And if you want to contract with me, that'll be $33 billion, which is what they're deriving out of each estate under these tranches by the QSIP number. And so it becomes less and less beneficial to maintain these charges against you, knowing that it invokes 46 U.S.C. 311. And this part of it is they're maintaining a lien on a public vessel. In the forgiveness doc and the executor doc, you're coming in and saying, look, I'm a public vessel. I'm no longer dead. I'm here as a living being. And as this vessel, you want to bump into me, you're going to assume the charges. That's what 46 U.S.C. 311 says. If you want to charge me with something, that's a risk that you take. This whole system is founded on the game of chess and the game of risk. Taking over continents. You are a continent with tenant. Continent. And so when they're taking over your estates, they run the risk of assuming the charges under 46 U.S.C. 311. And they know this. That's the name of the game. And so they do not like it when we come back and invoke 46 U.S.C. 311. They run off towards the hills. Sheriffs are retiring, judges are retiring, chief of police are retiring, and the most profound is that those chief of police, there's an 80% rate now, or percentage probability rate, that chief of police was schooled at Quantico. This is the FBI coming in and pretending to be something other than they are in order to maintain the federal state. But a confederacy is actually a criminal act. It's always a criminal act. It is not maintained as something good or beneficial. It's a group of people getting together and engaging in a business venture upon you, which develops the concept of privateering. Business license privateers going out attacking and capturing enemy vessels to bring them in front of admiralty courts for condemnation and sale. Now, if you want to still do that, you are subscribing and you are ascertaining that you are acting in war against me, contrary to the United Nations Charter, contrary to the rules of war themselves, because this war is a psychological war. It's a biological war maintained through the FDA, the medical industry, psychological industry. And what they're doing is unlawful on its face, even under their laws. And now that they're being held accountable, they do not like their laws very much, because they apply to them as much as they applied formally to the former prisoners of war that did not have a government. And the only reason that we were being held prisoners of war is because the government went bankrupt in 1933. So the corporations, under the illusion of charity, came in and said, well, we'll hold them, and these holding corporations will provide for their benefits. But that's unlawful on its face.
But they haven't.
No, they were using you through trick and deception, and that's again, it's contrary to the 1929 Geneva Convention. Every action they're maintaining is contrary to their own laws, and contrary to their own illusions, contrary to the Federal Reserve itself, because that's an eleemosynary trust. That thing was established to provide for the citizen if it's injured or harmed in any manner. And what they've done is they've raised it, they've upped the ante on the definition of injury, and now you can injure a stop sign. So they've been paying out benefits of the eleemosynary trust to supposed stop signs, but we all know that goes into attorney pockets through those IOTA trusts. They're non-taxable. They're not paying taxes on those. You know, it's just like this whole huge business schematic. And when you get down to a bottom line, because it's a corporation, each court is guilty of insider trading because they've got ringers set up, such as psychologists, such as psychiatrists, such as the GL or other expert witnesses. That's insider trading. It's bank fraud on its face. It's counterfeiting on its face, because they're transporting or transferring or remitting human beings into Federal Reserve notes. Now, that thing does not look like me. That thing does not look like you, so it's a counterfeit instrument, because it must look like and act as the original coin or the original metal or the original composition. The Federal Reserve note is not consistent with what I am. Otherwise, it would be something different. And it's entirely different based on the fact that a monetary value, a gold coin, for example, is not a debt. You know, all the way across the board, their use of their laws is inconsistent with the actual law the way it's written. And it can't be interpreted to justify any more of their behavior. There's no way in hell that it can be interpreted any other way. I mean, they've tried. They can codify it and they can make another statute for it, but those statutes are unlawful on their face according to the original law or the public law. We have another caller on the line as well, 616.
Yeah, that's me.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, and I think that the show you're hosting is great tonight, too, because you're really exploiting a lot of stuff. Anyways, Rod Class had done a thing in some of his history of, and it starts at about 7:01, and I think the date, and I'm not real sure here, is the biggest fraud. And Jeanette and them guys did things on, they went back in history just like you did, and, they kind of placed all this stuff. My question is kind of like, if you had a T-shirt, what would you put on it?
I'm not sure.
I know there's so much fraud about or amongst everything, and there's just so much bullshit. But
maybe that's what it should say, that on the back of it, maintain that you're a former cartoon. I mean, this is so ridiculous when you go back into the history and into the original charters and you realize what the fiction is, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there and you're like, this has been just one big, long cartoon. And just like Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage, and everybody's there to act in the play. But it goes beyond that, because now you've got injury to a stop sign, you've got injury to grass. I mean, they charged somebody in Ohio a couple of years ago. He went in and mowed a public park, and they charged him for mowing the public park.
Oh, okay, I understand that. And Rod Class was talking about because we come under agriculture, everybody that's growing something in their yard or the water that they're using to grow something can be, a situation now.
Right, they've codified it, and beyond that, they've engineered it to be their own. So the Corps of Engineers comes in to designate each and every county, each and every city, and what they're doing is they're making the water run all downhill into their reservoirs, and then they're fining us for collecting rainwater. Now, Rod Class, I really like Rod Class and what he has to say. However, he is claiming to be a D.C. citizen. And so he's going to get a whole bunch of orders from judges that say, yes, this is an administrative court. Yes, this is an administrative process. However, he's not able to sue them under this Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act because a citizen cannot sue a foreign state. Only a sovereign state can.
Yep, I understand that because you've said that before. And he thinks very highly of you. And
yes.
I'm
and I do of him as well.
Yeah, and I think that he and you need to do a click thing. Here's my thought is that, if you can clear the air between one another, that some of the other things that he's not apparent to might become apparent to him, because he says he's this outside thinker box guy. And I would love for him to, kind of correspond with you and make that thing happen, because I think that, he'd get a lot further ahead. He's
in a heartbeat. His first administrative ruling came in October of 2012, okay? So when he got that ruling, in November, Congress came in and made sure to put in the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act that a citizen cannot sue a foreign government. That was because of Rod Class. That is how powerful Rod Class is. However,
and I don't get me wrong, I understand that, because I've heard some things that came through the grapevine that said, oh yeah, well, he's really mucked up some things too. But
only that DC citizenship, he just has to give that up, and it's just so amazing and profound what he's been able to accomplish. However, he just can't facilitate the final result that he wants. And what we had done in the case in Northern District of Indiana, we obliterated the 1789 Judiciary Act, because all that did was cut up the country into the districts. And what happens is when you go into court, like in Arizona, for example, or in Washington State, any court that you're entering into, depending on the day of the year, day of the month that you go into that court, you're generating revenue only into the original 13 colonies. That's what the 1789 Judiciary Act did. It allowed generation of revenue per district. Before that, they didn't have any land. If you go back to Marbury versus Madison, they did it by court process, the same thing as the 1789 Judiciary Act. And when they did the 1789 Judiciary Act, that was to solidify in the mind of the sheeple that there was actual geographical states that this was referring to. They don't own any land. They got consent from the people after 1802 with the Acts of Enablement when they came in and said, well, we're the church. We're going to donate tracts of land, districts to these colleges, which is now the electoral colleges, of course. But we're going to donate 200,000 acres of land to each college, and we're going to call it districts. And the sheeple agreed, so that by consent, it appears like they own land, but they still don't own land. That's what we did in the U.S. District Court in northern Indiana. We said, come in and show me your title.
Okay. My question is, okay, let's go with the CAFR accounts and the MERS, that kind of stuff. Is some of that stuff being dealt with what you're doing?
Absolutely, because MERS, people see that as the mortgage deal. That is the Municipal Employees Retirement Securities Act, and PERS is the Public Employees Retirement Securities Act. All of these things are under ERISA, and what the municipal and public employees need to realize is that they are officers. If you go back to the 1929 Geneva Convention, officers are all prisoners of war as well. They have no immunity.
I've heard you say that. And so the CAF accounts, the QSIP number, because I thought that MERS was one thing, but it's municipality in what? Or
Employees retirement. Yeah, Municipal Employees Retirement Securities. And PERS is Public Employees Retirement Securities. And you can go over to Geico. Geico Insurance has this great commercial product on the television. They're not telling you that that is the government employee insurance corporation. You are putting money into that thing.
Yeah, and I don't think that half of the I've seen this on talk show and stuff like that these women that are veterans or whatever even know any of this.
No, it's under the action of low intensity conflict. Females are being inducted or bought through the action of hearts and minds. So when they are offered welfare benefits or other benefits, this allows them to engage with the system. Now, if you go back to the story of Eve in the Bible, that is the story of Eve. The judge or fiduciary, fig tree, that came in and offered her reservation on her rights and said, hey, we can give you all sorts of stuff if you claim these titles. If you claim to be a female, if you claim to be a male. And you can see this as it happens with Adam and Eve. Adam was given the power to name all things. And so they took up all these concepts. And the first action of the law merchant is selling you concept. Then you have to buy the rights and benefits that come with the concept. And then you have to purchase the rights and benefits that are stolen by the concept. So if for example, I didn't have the right to vote at one point in time, Congress pointed the finger at you, the male, and said, you're a bad boy. You're not allowing her the right to vote. It was by congressional action that I had my right to vote taken away. And so I had to buy my right by court process from Congress to offset its bankruptcy.
And that's a strange concept in its own, but I understand some of it, and I'm understanding some, because I understand some of the welfare thing, you know. What I'm saying is because you talked about that. When somebody goes out for welfare and then even if they're going through a divorce and then they're trying to get welfare for the kids and all that other stuff, I kind of understand that. You know.
That one has two functions, because what she's not realizing is that she's a piece of property. That is how chattel is created. She's worshiping another father. The fiduciary is her father. So she's asking it, Daddy, can I have a benefit of my estate? Bottom line. Daddy, can you give me this? Daddy, can you give me a right? Daddy, I need this now. Okay? Now, when you go into Black's Law Dictionary and you find out what an issue is a descendant. So when you're laying issues before the court, you are giving your children to the bank.
Okay.
And they get to now be tricked out by court process. This is all low-intensity conflict.
Yeah, I try to explain that to some of my friends, and, you know, as I said, you know, the race thing and a lot of other stuff it's a facade to cover up for so much bullshit.
Absolutely.
And they laugh at me, you know, to a certain extent, but they're starting to really see the reality of it.
Right, and it takes a lot. That's what Jesus was maintaining in Revelation. He says, you know what, an angel's going to come down from the heaven, and this is you. An angel's going to come down, and it's going to offer you a scroll, and it's going to say, well, eat it up. It's going to taste like honey on the lips, and it's going to be bitter on the belly. It's going to be really, really freaking hard to swallow. And this is really, really hard to swallow because all of this time we have been worshiping that thing. We've been patronizing it, and we've been allowing it to represent us, thinking that it had our best interest in mind, when in reality it's always been a war upon us, a psychological war upon us. And part of low-intensity conflict is winning hearts and minds, and I'll read that real quick. Winning hearts and minds is a concept occasionally expressed in the resolution of war, insurgency, and other conflicts in which one side seeks to prevail not by the use of superior force, but by making emotional or intellectual appeals to sway supporters of the other side. The use of the term hearts and minds to reference a method of bringing a subjugated population on side was first used during the Malayan emergency by the British, who employed practices to keep the Malayans' trust and reduce a tendency to side with ethnic Chinese communists, in this case by giving medical and food aid to the Malays and I don't know. Where did Hans go?
We won't go by in your life. You won't regret.
Sort of leaving the Pfarm. 1929 Geneva Convention. Under Congress, to offset congressional bankruptcy, judges were just indicted because they take an oath to Congress to offset their congressional bankruptcy by throwing you and I in there, which is human trafficking. The judges were also indicted. That's why our judge was able to come in and overrule their judge, because we have public law on our side. They were facilitating statute and legislation. They are actually barred by their own law, the 1832 Nullification Proclamation that Andrew Jackson had handed down, from arguing statute or legislation in a court case. They cannot even appeal our orders. They cannot appeal our overruled docs because they are stopped by the 1832 Nullification Proclamation that Andrew Jackson handed down. Because if you argue statute and legislation in a court case, you are, in that proclamation, you are to be held in contempt of court.
Right. I'm not doubting the legal aspects, the lawful aspects of what you've done, but what I'm asking is, being that we know we're dealing with gangsters who are murderers and pedophiles, okay? Let me just use an example, like, say, a case like John Gotti versus the state of New York or something, okay? If John Gotti knows that there are witnesses that are going to be testifying against him and there's no way he's going to get away with it, okay, and he can't generate his freedom legally, he still could exercise unlawfully to have these witnesses killed before the court day comes. And what I'm saying to you is, what makes you think they're going to follow the law?
Well, they already are, and that's the thing, is the whole entire system is set up.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is
Okay, wait a second, because it's very important, and I know this is like mind-boggling, but the rules of the game are Roman law. And when you go back into the foundations of Roman law, they're able to own the Roman citizen because it claims to be a citizen. Okay? It's lost at sea. Those are the foundations. It always reverts back to something like the 1666 Sesquiquivay Act. Okay, so the Roman citizen is now judges, attorneys, bankers, Congress, and Senate. They have already been declared dead and lost at sea. Those are the rules of the game. I'm not dead. I am sitting here at the location where I located myself to the State Department last week. And I am still here because these are the rules of the game, and I bet my life on my process this time. They know
But what I'm saying is they realize that they're screwed.
Absolutely. And they have to help each other, but it's more cost effective. When they're out there seeking us and the privateers are out there attacking us, they're getting a $100 fine. They're getting a $200 fine. They're getting a $1,000 fine. They're no longer making money on us, and so therefore they were trying to put us into third world status.
There's no loyalty among psychopaths. They don't care who they're going.
They don't care who they're going after because all they see
So what I'm asking you is, you have done the right thing and won their judgment. Who's to stop them? Like, put it this way.
Well,
what I'm asking is this. If I filed a lawsuit against somebody, right, who did me wrong, and the judge says, okay, you owe Mr. Champagne $2 million. Well, if that person has somebody come to my house and blow my brains out, now he doesn't have to pay a dead man. What's to stop them from basically saying, okay, you know what?
Revolution Radio, standing tall not only for the people of America, but for the human beings of the world.